I found my burlesque fashion and style. So, I've been in burlesque for a little over 2 years, but I've had an interest in burlesque for I can't even tell you how long. A very, very long time. I just didn't really know that it was accessible for me, I guess. But let's dive right in. So, for me, I didn't really know where to start, and I think that's probably how it is for a lot of us. We don't really know where to start, how to start, but you know that you just have to start. So, what I did is basically go through the history of burlesque and look at all of the icons and the legends and see what I like the most because I already knew that I had a fascination and a desire to learn more about classic styles of burlesque. So that's where I started. So I started with Josephine Baker and Eartha Kitt and Tempest Storm. Those icons and legends stood out to me, and I wanted to basically curate my own style through being inspired by those icons. But since I'm my own unique person, we're all different, I had to figure out how to, basically combine those three people and myself into something original that I love. So I want to talk a little bit about the foundations of movement and burlesque. So, modern burlesque is super amazing. You're going to find anything. There's neo burlesque, there's weird lesque, there's classic burlesque, there's sports lesque, I mean, you're really never going to run out of types of burlesques in this modern day and age. You're not going to run out. Um, there's metalesque, there's rocklesque, there's yeah, like I said, anything and everything, which is awesome because there's a space for everybody. But originally, burlesque started out with a ballet type of look. Um, Kind of this French look, and the corsets and the skirts, a lot of tunics, and tights were very popular in the late 1800s. And then it starts to get into a little bit more of the bedless. So burlesque and belly dance are kind of, in my mind at least, are kind of like sisters because they're so similar um, in the way that the art is portrayed. And I would love to talk about that in another video. But since we're talking about fashion, I want to talk about what the bedla is. So the bedla, traditional bedla, is basically the kind of a bra type and a skirt. So we see a lot of that kind of mesh with burlesque in the early 1900s, late 1800s. So it goes from being this ballet type of look, very can type, which is still very available and a very popular aesthetic nowadays. But that's kind of where it split off in the early 1900s. Um, so after that, a lot of people were getting into, or a lot of burlesque performers were getting into the movement of the fashion. So, moving the skirts around and basically, trial and error and seeing how this makes the artist feel. How does it feel when you flip your really beautiful chiffon skirt and let it float in the air? How does that make you feel as an artist? And how do you think it makes other people feel in the audience? And people were starting to go figure out these things along the way. And that's kind of how that got started. So it started to be reshaped by a lot of Black artists here in the United States. So, in the Western society and Western culture, as belly dance moved this way, it became, uh, yeah, very, very popular. And in later videos, I want to get into uh, more about belly dance. That's actually where I got started. I got started in belly dance before I got into burlesque, and I still love to belly dance and things like that. And I'd love to talk about that in another video of the origins of belly dance and the Americas and all of those things and how it's coming back. But to stay on topic, um, yeah, basically it started to resurface here in the Americas, and a lot of Black artists were mixing jazz, and it's called polycentric movement. It's basically when you move multiple body parts independently, but in a rhythm. So that's kind of where that started to pop up and take center stage here in the Americas is uh, belly dance and burlesque mixing in with the early 20s, and you get the flappers coming in, and so you have all these different styles of burlesque coming in, and it's like this huge melting pot of tons of fashion and different styles like that. So, some of my favorites, like I said before, Josephine Baker, Eartha Kitt, or Tempest Storm. What I love about each of these icons, for Josephine Baker, I love that she has a very Art Deco look. That is a big theme in the 1920s. So, you're going to see a lot of dramatic. I think ensembles in general are just big in burlesque. You're gonna see dramatic ensembles in any way, but especially in more of the classic styles with the feathers and the big, huge headdresses. And if you look at Josephine Baker throughout her lifetime, you'll see just how elaborate her costumes are. I think they are just stunning. So I definitely keep her on my Pinterest board very high up there whenever I am curating my fashion. Eartha Kitt, she is also way up there with her animal prints and high leg cuts. I love just like a huge slit. I think it's so beautiful. And I know that I'm pretty sure she looks so tiny. I don't know exactly how tall she is. I'm going to probably go back and do some more research on her height, but because she's so tiny, I'm sure with her costumes, she took that into consideration. So, I am also not very tall, so I like to take that into consideration as well. Sometimes I like to wear really tall high heels, but that's not always what I want to do. That's not always the look I'm going for. So um, I tend to like a really long line down my legs to make my legs look longer. Another one is Tempest Storm. I think I briefly talked about her style. She was she was in her prime. I think that was probably the 50s and 60s. And she has a very beautiful hourglass shape. So I really like that look. Um, I think corsets. I think of like mesh robes, and still I think of a lot of elaborate clothing, but more of a kind of like a fashion model is what I think of with Tempest Storm. During her prime, the parade in Peel was super, super, super popular. And of course, it still is because that is I think, a foundation of burlesque, the typical parade and peel, and I love it. I love to do the parade, and then you stop and then do the peel, and I think all of it is amazing. So she was known for that, and um, and that was just very popular at her time. And I definitely love her aesthetic. So another thing that I like to do is look at the Kibbe body test. There's a test out there called the Kibbe body test, and basically you can go on and you see, y you either fill out questions or you can just I think that's how it works. I'll have to go back and double check, but, I've used that for years to help pick out clothes that I feel best in. So I like to pick outfits that I feel most confident in. And since I don't always know my body type and what clothes look best on my body type, that's why I use the Kibbe body test. And that helps me figure out where my lines are and what type of fabrics would look better on me. So there's so many different body types out there. And that test kind of helps you, yeah, pretty much figure out where you are and go from there. And that's another way that I kind of build my foundation on designing my costumes. So if I know that I am going to be, maybe doing a show where I need to be a fairy, and where do I want to start? Do I want to start with the dress that is a maxi dress, or do I want to start with a mini dress? And if so, what um, what type of fabric looks best on me, and then what type of do I need it to be tight fitting, or do I want it to be like a mermaid skirt, tight up top and then loose at the bottom? Does that look best on me? And then I have to think about what colors look best on me. So a lot of people like to do that. I think it's like the vein test. It's basically where you put colors up to your skin, and you decide if you are like cool toned or toned or neutral. So that one, for me personally, I like to use my makeup brand, and I don't like to switch my makeup brands because I mean, who likes to do that? So I don't like it when they discontinue their makeup. But Fenty did that not too long ago, and I had to go back out and like find a new brand of makeup and this whole thing. And while I was doing that, I wanted to make sure that I got, the perfect shade that matched the best. And I was trying to figure out, am I more neutral or am I more warm? And for me personally, I'm just a teeny bit more warm. So it just helps to know exactly where you are on the color spectrum, because that will help you decide what colors look best on your skin on stage. So when I'm looking at colors, that's what I do. I look at what color looks best with my skin tone, and then I also think about how is it going to look on stage. So Josephine Baker, when I look at her wardrobe throughout her career, I notice that she uses her skin as an accessory, and I love that. So during her time, if you're familiar with Josephine Baker, she is one of the first, or she may be actually the first African American burlesque performer to become nationwide. And she was, I mean, brilliant. Not only talented, but completely brilliant. She was a spy. She did all these amazing things. Um, I definitely recommend looking into her history, but she used her skin as an accessory, and I loved that. So you can tell that she curated her costumes around her skin color. And I think that's definitely something I like to do. I like to, see exactly where the colors blend well. So what I did is I actually wanted to know what colors it takes to make my foundation. And I did that by mixing acrylic paint. And for me, I use different shades of brown, and I used gold color, and I used a yellow color, and just a teeny bit of. I tried to mix in like two different greens to make an olive, and it was perfect. So I know that gold, yellow, brown, copper, olives, all those are my shades of who I am. So I know when I go out to look for fabrics, to look for fabrics that go well with those tones. Also, when it comes to finding pantyhose, I found a really cool trick that I like. I like to, or what I basically I had no choice. So I went to go get some pantyhose from Amazon or wherever, and they didn't have my shade, and I didn't want to wear a shade that's not my shade. So after figuring out the colors in my makeup, I went to get some Rit dye to dye my pantyhose. So I got white pantyhose, and then they didn't have gold and Rit dye, so I used a gold and yellow, which worked perfectly. And the only thing there that was a little tricky is I had to find out the ratio. I had to put in basically a lot more gold and yellow than I did with the brown, and that type of thing you can just figure out along the way. But I definitely recommend that if they don't have your complexion in pantyhose or in anything that you want to be your complexion, say underwear, or you're dyeing a t-shirt, or you're dyeing a bra, maybe you want a complete nude set. Break down the colors in your makeup. If you don't have acrylic paints and you don't want to go that route, they probably have the description of the colors in your makeup online. So I use MAC now, and when I went online to order the foundation, the powder foundation, I looked at the descriptions, and that's how I found my shade, and it kind of described in there the colors. That's why I picked that shade. So, and it just so happened to be a good one, because we all know how that is, a trial and error of being miscolored, and then you have to go back and all this stuff. So, yeah, that's basically what I do with pantyhose and dyeing things. But to talk a little bit more about how I find my fashion and where I'm at now, I am still doing what I just talked about. I'm still doing all of those things, finding inspiration through the legends, finding inspiration through what brought me to burlesque in the first place. So my culture and things like that, I find a lot of inspiration through that. And um, now, as I am developing more as an artist, I also like to, um, I really like to mix patterns. So that's something that I like. I've seen it done a lot in the fashion industry and things like that. And since I'm sort of new to the burlesque industry, I haven't seen it done as much. But I know that it's definitely done here a lot as well. But yeah, so I'm kind of getting into that, mix matching patterns and playing around with that, and still playing around with colors because uh like I said, once you pick out your color, you got to think, does this look good on stage too? So same with makeup. When it goes to putting on my makeup, I make sure that I put it on in a particular way so that uh the stage lights don't disrupt, you know, what I want the audience to see. So, I think I covered most of my process of how I go about kind of curating what I like to do. I pick out my colors. But first, I gotta find, my color within myself, and um, also, another thing I've seen done is a lot of people will uh, not only will they dye fabric like their own color if they want to make like an all nude set, but they will basically tie dye. And I thought that was really, really cool. Tie dye is so amazing and it's unique. And I've seen a lot of people tie dye their burlesque garments and their burlesque uh, costumes. And I've seen drag artists do that as well, which I think is amazing. So that's my advice, if anything, is to just always keep your eyes open for inspiration. And when it comes to getting started, you just basically have to get started. And if you know at all what you like if you're watching a burlesque show or a drag show and you're in something within you says, "Ooh, I really like that." And you're like, "Well, how can I, take inspiration from that and build something of my own, something unique for myself?" Basically figure out exactly what you like about it. So that's what I did whenever I came across some of the classic legends. Immediately, I knew I was interested in classic burlesque. I actually didn't even know anything other than classic burlesque before I got started. So when I got started, that's the only thing I knew about. But that's obviously what had been sitting in my heart for a long time. And that's where I got started on, building my fashion. So if you really love, weird lesque, or if you really love any type of burlesque, get started there. Reach out to people um, and ask them questions. Just the first step is always the hardest. But anyway, I think that's all I've got for today. Thank you so much for joining me on my very first podcast. And I have so many exciting stories to talk about my first year in burlesque and behind the scenes and just all of it. The highs, the lows, the tears, the fears, the all of it. I can't wait to share it with everyone, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.